Hello everyone, welcome to this free online course for Excel. This is a very basic course for you, and the purpose is for you to finish this with some basic knowledge and some confidence to be able to use Excel to more of your ability. So it's not a very complicated and advanced course, but this should give you enough tools to have more confidence and continue your progress using Excel. My name is Elad. I've been using Excel for more than 10 years. I've always been the office go-to guy for any questions about Excel. And for the past couple of years, I've launched my own YouTube channel and I've been freelancing as an Excel expert, working with people all over the world using Upwork and People for Hour. And I've been enjoying that very much. And part of the feedback that I got was that people want me to record a course in Excel. So this is what I've thought of. So let's start off the first chapter with the very basics of navigating your Excel sheet. When you create a new Excel file, it looks like this. It's written as book 1. You have sheet 1 as the only sheet available, and it looks very much like this. There's nothing filled out. So first of all, these are the cells. These are your main area of working in Excel. Everything in Excel is a table. There are columns from A through XFD, and there are rows from 1 to all the way, I don't remember. Here you go. Last row is 1,048,000-ish. So it's a pretty huge table that you have a number of cells to work on. Every sheet has this number. So whenever you use Excel, you reference a specific cell. For example, this cell is C2. It's in column C, row number 2. Okay, some people use would call it 2.3 because they would count the columns. But I think using the ABC and numbers is much more clear, and that's how you should use it. So in the basic navigation, I want to walk you through how to use the sheet. So you can go between the cells using your keyboard. Now I'm pressing left and right and up and down. You can select. You see my cursor here, so you move around the cells, and once you click on the left button, you select one cell. You can keep the left cell clicked, and that's where you can mark more than one cell. And you'll see later why that's very helpful and important if you want to make changes, copy, paste, delete, things like that to more than one cell. If you click on the right button, that will give you a lot of options for whatever selection you had. And we'll get to some of that a little bit later. Okay. Another important thing you have to understand that there are also shortcuts. You can use keyboard shortcuts to, make all sorts of actions in Excel, and it usually tells you, what are those shortcuts. You see, when I go with my mouse over the save icon, I get Control S. That is a save. If I go over here over copy, so it's Control C. So not all of these have these options, but some of them you do have, and it's important that you know that you can also use them. For example, if I want to go to the last cell in a row or in a column, I can press on Control, Function, and the bottom button, and you see it took me to the last cell. So there's a lot of Excel shortcuts that you can use with the keyboard, and That's not the main focus here. So this was the beginning, just to give you an orientation um, of how to use the certain sheet. Now you'll notice here on the bottom you have sheets. Sheet 1 and the second sheet I already named it as sample data. But as you notice, I can go between the sheets back and forth, and you can have as many sheets as you want. And it's very important to organize your data in sheets and not everything in the same sheet, because it'll be very hard to manage it this way. Okay, very important that you have the ability to save. So by clicking on File, you can click on Save, which saves automatically, or Save As, which brings you to other options where you can save something with a specific name, with a specific type, a lot of types, a lot of names. It's not that important now, but it is important to give a name to your file. So for example, I'm going to call this one, sorry, not print. All right, I'm going to call it Excel course, for example. Okay, and now you see on the top, it changed the name to Excel course. So now whenever I click on save, it's going to save that button. I don't have to click on save as every time. Now let's talk a little bit about data entering and what you actually do with these spreadsheets. So you see here in sample data, I created a very small table with some information, and I can key in information manually. Like I can enter in Dallas city, Texas is the state, and I can input sales of 650,000. Okay? I could also key in information like Salt Lake City, Utah. I can also reference other cells. So I can use the equal button, equal sign, sorry. And you see already I have a function here, and I can key the function over here, or I can continue in the cell. So let's say I want it to be 50,000 more than Arizona. So I can flag Arizona, and you see it's referencing C5 that we talked about before, plus 50,000. And now if I change Arizona, what's nice, if I change Arizona to 450, now it changes automatically. I can also have a function inside, equals 300,000 times 2. Okay? So you can have functions, all the mathematical functions, plus 50,000, plus 50 divided by 2. So you can have all the mathematical functions that you can think of. Some of it require using a function, an Excel-based function, and some of them are simple signs. And of course, you can reference the cells. You can also reference more than one cell. So for example, if I want to see the sum of sales, so I can just use the equal sign, click on C2 plus C3 plus C4 plus C5 plus C6 plus C7. And you notice that I can even change, using my keyboard, I can move between the cells. Okay, and here I can also write the function over here, plus C8. And that gives me the sum of sales. But this is very ineffective. So as you can imagine, since Excel is a very effective system with a lot of shortcuts, most of the things that you do manually and take you a long time, you probably can do them very quickly. And in this case, we can use a function called sum. It's a very common function. When I start keying in letters, I get all the different functions and options that I have here. So I click on sum, and you can even see that it gives you a short description of what this function is. If you want more details, you can double click sum, all right, and click over here on function, and that would give you more details on the function. So it tells you for this you need to have at least two numbers, adds all numbers in the range of cells, and it gives you more information as you move with it. So in this case, I can click on sum, open the parentheses, and then I can just select the range. This is where I'm left clicking the mouse button and just selecting all the cells that I want, closing the function, and I get the same score. I could also manually put that in. I could key in sum and write C2, and automatically you see the blue rectangle through C8. And you see the color blue matches what you're summing. So there's three different options to calculate something very simple. Okay? So you can key in the data manually, you can reference other sheets, other cells, and you can also use functions. Now you can also reference other sheets. So for example, in sheet 3, let's say I want to see the sales for Dallas. I can go over here and I can just look for Dallas and get the value, 650. So if I go here now and change Dallas and remove this part, this will change as well. So you can reference other sheets also with formulas. I can do the same formula for the sum of cells for this sheet. So sum, referencing the sheet, selecting all of them, and you notice that now the function has the sheet's name over here before the range. That's how you know it's referencing a sheet. That's how you can also understand, because if you click here now, you don't see the cells because they're in a different sheet. All right, here when you clicked on the function, you saw what it was referencing. Yeah. So this is how you key in information very basically. Okay, so this is how you key in information very basically. Now let's talk a little bit about, changing the layout of your information. In the Home tab where I'm currently at, there are a lot of options, and let's talk about the main options that you probably are going to use. First of all, let's select this table, and you can see here we have a font. So we can switch from this one to this one to whatever we want. Okay? It's kind of ugly, so if you don't mind, I'll just go back to the default one. You can change the font size. You can key in, you can select a number. You can key the number in, 20. Or you can even use the plus or minus signs over here to increase or decrease the font size. These three options, bold, italic, and underline. In the underline, you can even have a double underline. Okay, and I click it once to go back. The borders, so you can have a lot of options here for borders. Just one size, just one side, top or bottom, thick, etc., etc. Most people just use this, which gives us a nice border from all sides. You can, for example, select only the text, and you can have a thick border, for example, for the top part. Okay, you can do whatever you want. You can also clear, no border, and it's back to no border. Also very common is to add colors, so you can, clarify the data and visualize it better. So you can select a color. So you have, like a palette over here. If there's something more specific that you want, you can always click on more colors, and then you can really select from here And even if you want something even more specific, you can even use the RGB or hexagon, coding to get yourself a specific color. And you can see what that color would be over here. Okay, so I just gave a special color over here. Once you do that, then you will start seeing that in the recent colors. And you can always go back to no fill. Now the font is the same, exactly the same. Your basic options, and you can go to more and do exactly the same. So I can color it red, for example. You have the whole alignment part where, again, you can select if it's going to be in the middle, in the bottom part, in the lower part. I didn't talk about the size of the cell itself, but you can change the size. So I can, if you see, once I move my mouse, then I get this sign. This means I can change the height, and I can change the column. And now if I choose these options, they make more sense because you see it moves around. So I can get all of the different options in this case. By the way, if you want to get back to the, let's say, the minimum required, you can double click on that and then it goes back to the minimum. It's the auto width or auto height option. So that's this part over here. You have the decrease or increase indent, so it just moves around. Okay. It's more, I don't use that much, but you can use it. You have the ability to change the direction of the text, going up, this way. You can even have a really specific direction if you want. These options are the same if you right click and click on format cells. So it gives you basically all the options that we just covered and more. This will switch between right to left. Also, these are two important things. Wrap text. Wrap text basically means that if the text is greater than the size of the cell, it's going to change it so it fits. So if I have a very, let's say, you can use Los Angeles, so it doesn't fit, right? If I click wrap text, it's just going to increase the height so it will fit. What I'm constantly pressing now is Control Z. Control Z means undo, or it's this option over here. See, undo. Anything you can undo. I wrote 5, now Control Z, undo typing. Okay, so that's very, very useful. Merge and center. If you want to merge more than one cell, sometimes you can see that and people use that. If they have, for example, if they have 2 columns and they want the same headline, they can select these 2 cells, click on merge and center, and now this headline supports 2 columns. Okay. And last on this topic of the formatting is the number section, which is very, very useful. So I normally don't use that. I usually like to right click and use format cells number. I just find it more user friendly. You have all the options: general, number with the separator, decimal points, all kinds of currency, accounting, dates with a lot of options, percentages, etc., etc. And even you have some custom. So in the custom, you can actually write on your own or use custom fit. Chances are you're going to find whatever you need here. It is important for text if you want. There are signs in Excel that automatically create a function. If I write 1 plus 2, it's going to be equal to 3. But what if I want the cell to show me 1 plus 3 equals 1 plus 3? So I go to Format Cells, and I select this to be a text. Now it will remain as a text. That's a nice trick. So shortcut here is to change, but it doesn't give you all the options. And what I do usually use is this one, which adds or switch to percentage, etc., etc. So this was the number part, or the whole formatting options. So I'm walking through you quickly again. You have, this is where you change the font itself, colors, and the size of them, the alignment, how they're positioned, and the number, if it's a number or text or date or whatever. Um, Another important thing that I really recommend that you start using is this little shortcut called Format Painter. So what Format Painter does, let's say I have a number here. Format Painter, what it does, and I'm going to color it red, and I'm going to give it a blue background, and I'm going to, make a percentage out of it. And when I click on Format Painter, and you see my logo, my mouse logo changed, I can mark more than one cell, and they will change to the new format. And I'm going to double click on the column so you see that it extended. And if I want to go back, let's say I can go back over here. So this is a very, very powerful option that I recommend that you start using. Copy, paste special, cut, click on this. Okay, next up, let's talk about some basic data manipulation that we use in Excel, and it's very common and you do it all the time. First off is copy and paste. So I can take this number over here. Let's use this one. I can take this number over here and I can click this button, copy, or I can click on Control C, which I normally do. I can go over here and I can click on Control V and it's going to paste it. Now, sometimes this will not give me the result I want. If this, for example, this is a cell that's referencing a sheet plus a number. Now I'm going to do the same. I'm going to copy it over here. I'm going to get a different number because you see what happened. It's referencing, the reference moved. The reference is relative to wherever you are unless you use a dollar sign. What's a dollar sign? A dollar sign is the dollar sign. It basically freezes, it tells Excel to freeze either the row or the column. You can, if you use $1 next to the row, it means the row is going to be frozen. So you can move right and left and the column will change, up and down and the column won't change, but whatever happens, the row will remain. If you add a $sign before the column, then it's the opposite. So now I'm referencing C5 no matter what. So if I move around, you see the number won't change. Let's see what happens if I only reference the row. So it moved. You see the column moved. Now I'm referencing D, but I'm referencing number 5. Now let's see what happens if I reference C and 5. So the rows remain the same, the column remained the same, but now if I go down, so it referenced C as the column, but the rows went with me. So the dollar sign is very important that you master this and use. So that's the basic copy. You can also always Control C, right click, and click on Paste Special. Now Paste Special has a lot of options. I'm not going to cover all of them, but you can see that basically you can paste formulas, which is what is the default option. You can paste values. Paste values means even if this is a function, okay, I'm going to paste it as the value. Okay, so no matter what you have written here or referencing here, it's always going to be returned as a value. That's a very nice option if you're copying between sheets or something and you don't want all the functions because they won't work in your new sheet. So that's very useful. You can also use these like values in number formats, values in number formats, so you can remain with the formatting or without. And there are other options here. I'm not going to go over them now since we're only talking about the basics. So that was copy and paste, which is very, very common to use. Okay, cut, clear, delete. Also, you can use the cut option. The difference between cut and copy is this will make the cell disappear or clear it. You see the difference? When I copy, I'm duplicating. When I cut, I eliminate the source. Copy paste works on whatever you want. So I can select this entire range and paste it over here. I can cut it and paste it here in the new table, and I can do whatever I want. Now let's talk about changing a little bit the sheet or the table itself. Let's say you want to add another column like country. So you could copy, paste, or you could add a column. Notice that when I go over to the column next to the letter, the arrow turns into the cursor turns into a black arrow. I can right click and I have an insert, delete, clear contents option. If I click insert, it's just going to shift the entire column. If I'm going to click delete, it's going to delete the entire column. And I'm using Control Z. And if I'm going to click on clear contents, it's going to delete, well, erase actually the content. There's a big difference between clear contents and delete. When you click on delete, it actually deletes formatting and anything you had over there. When you click on clear contents, it only erases the text. So for example, you can see here we have a certain format. If I delete the column and now I'm going to write something, it won't be colored in red. If I click on clear and write something, it keeps my formatting. That's very important also to be aware of this. The same with the rows. You see I move my cursor until the number and I can insert, delete, do whatever I want. I can even do it not on a level of a column. I can do it on a level of a single cell or more than one. Let's say I want to add, it's going to be weird, but let's say I want to add another cell here, so I can right click and I have the same options. Shift cells down, so I'm taking it down, and I can also shift to the right, so I can do all of these. Now when you do all, you got to make sure that when you do that it doesn't mess up your entire sheet layout, because sometimes I don't recommend doing that. I always recommend adding sheets for the entire column, because then you maintain all the functions that you had before. Okay. Okay, data filtering. Let's talk about data filtering, which is a very good and simple analytic option that you have in Excel. Still with this simple table, well, let's give this some sort of value. Okay, let's use again what we learned to change the format. Let's say I have this table and I want to change the way it's presented. For example, I want all the states to be in alphabetical order. So I go over here and I can use two options, sort and filter. Now, you can access them here, or I like to access them over here. So let's start with filter. Filter, once you click it, and you can either select the column or you can select a uh, certain column by doing this, or you can just click wherever you have information and it will automatically give you filters for all three. Now I can use filter for many options. You can see I can sort, and it's sorted by values, up and down, sorting and descending. I can sort by color. If I had a color here, then it will first sort by the colors. Okay, let's say I have 3 colors. Okay, or this way. But I can also filter by colors, and I can also filter by numbers. This gives me a lot of options. I can have all these rules: greater than, less than, between, top 10. For example, show me just what's between 500 and 1 million. And that gives me only one option. Now, if I want to remove that filter, I have a few options. I go to data, I can click on clear, or I can just eliminate the filter itself. If I click on clear, it eliminates the filter, and if I click on filter, it just eliminates it altogether. I can also select. You see here I can select. So I can click on select all, and I can cherry pick what I want to see. Again, clicking on filter just makes the filter go away. So that's filter, and of course you can filter more than once. So I can filter greater than 400,000. Maybe I'm missing a digit. Sorry, wanted to, let's say 460. Okay, and I also want to see only, I don't want to see New York or Illinois. So you see I have 2 filters for 2 different columns, and they work together, which is very good and very nice. Also important is the reapply option. So for example, now if I change the cells to 150,000. Okay, now if I click reapply, it's going to reapply the filters. So those 2 rows will disappear now. Again, and you can see also that something is missing since you have these 2 columns in blue. Clear. So we talked about how to use the data filter. Now let's talk about how to use sort, which is a bit different, but it has a little bit more options that filter has. So in sorting, I usually like to select the range, click on data, and click on sort. Then you get this pop-up message. My data has headers yes or no, depending what you selected. And you can start sorting by the different columns. You can see you can sort by value, color, etc. And you can decide what the order is. And what's nice about sorting, for example, let's sort by state. Okay, and now I have the state. Now I can click again on sort. It's going to remember what I sorted before. And I can now add a level. Okay, then I can say, you know what, let's sort by cells. And you see it identifies it's a number. So now it gives us the largest to smallest. And what I can do, I can change the order. So I can move this up. That makes it, first of all, it's going to sort by the sales and then have an internal sorting by the state. Okay, so we have, so this is a formula, right? So it keeps changing. So let's just make sure we, as I showed you, you can copy and let's just paste by value. Okay, and let's go back to sorting. All right, so now you see it's sorted by the sales and then the state. if there was an option. It's not always an option. Let's do the opposite. Let's first sort by the state and then the sales. And since we have 2 for Texas, you see it's sorting it alphabetically, and within Texas, Houston and Dallas is sorted by sales, which is a nice option if you want to have multiple sorting. This is, I guess, the most I've used sort before. Okay, and you have an option to sort by case, and of course you can always delete a level, add a level, copy, change, and everything. So this is how you can sort and filter. Now let's talk about ranges. Range is actually a very nice option that you have in Excel. What does range mean? I can define a range of cells to be a range, and then I can use that as a reference. So for example, let's say I want a list of all the cities. I can select, and here instead of A2 I can write city. And now, first of all, you can see that it has that option. I can reference the name city, and Excel understands that I'm referencing this area. I can do the same for state, and I can do the same for sales, and I can do whatever I want. Another option, for me that's the quickest way, just select and change this name. But you can also go over here to formulas, name manager, and you see I already have the city that I defined. You can click on new, give it a name, for example state, and in the range you can define it to be this range. And now I have 2 ranges, city and state, and I can edit, I can delete, I can do a lot of things with ranges. Okay, so what do you do with the range? So with the range you can do many things. For example, and let's also have a range for sales. So I can call this one sales, and it automatically gives me. So now I have 3 ranges. So for example, I can reference now, I can use the sum function for sales, and you see it identifies that range, and I get a number, which is nice. I can also use, I can reference the ranges, for example, in another sheet. Let's say I want to get all the city names, so I can do this, and basically I get the names. And let's say I want to add another city. Let's say Boston, Massachusetts, okay, 40 grand. What I can afford, 400,000. So I can go to name manager, city, go ahead and change that to A9, go ahead and change that to A9, go ahead and change that to A9, and now it's already updated here, and the sum would have been updated as well. So, and of course you can use this for a lot of different options that in more advanced, let's say, usages of Excel, you can use that. But it is important to use that. Now, we'll talk later on about tables, and when we use tables, this is even stronger or easier to use, to combine the range and the table. Now I want to show you a nice little thing that can be used very easily with range, and that's a drop-down list. A drop-down list is an option for you to select from a fixed number of options. So if you go to data, there's a button here called data validation. Data validation has a lot of options here. I'm not going to go through everything. But if you go to settings, allow, instead of any value, list, source equals city, and look at that. I can now only select options from the city. Even more, I cannot enter whatever value I want. So this is a nice combination of data validation in ranges. Very common, very used in many options. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about a different topic, about entering illustrations. This is a nice option for you to sort of give some color and lighting to your Excel file. So in illustrations, you have a lot of options. I'll show you a few of them. For example, there's the shapes. These are basic Excel-based shapes. You can create a rectangle and it says, "Hi, everyone." And this could be just something that's not it's not part of a cell, so you can just play with the size, you can play with the colors, and you can still have cells behind them with text. So I like to use that for messages or just for sort of company logos and things like that. So you got all sorts of shapes built in from Excel, arrows and connectors, and you can also build flowcharts. Like if I build this, I can really create a flowchart even in Excel. I don't recommend you do that. I think there's better options, but you see this is like a starting point for a flowchart. So you could do that. In the shapes, what's also very nice is you can use you know, all sorts of flags and banners, which you can use for links and everything. So it's nice to be aware of this. In pictures, it's very broad. You can pull pictures from your device. You can pull picture from stock images from the web, which is very nice. So this see, I'm 365, so I can just put that in and add that to my file. Give it a second. Where is it? There you go. It's a pretty big picture. When working with pictures, of course, you can change the size just like every editor. You can crop over here, so I can change what I want to see. You can also change the size here, change that 2x4, let's say. And you can always send it to the back or send it to the front. So these are the basics. I also want to show you the 3D model, what I think is very nice and colorful, where you can bring in Okay, so in the 3D models, I also think something that's worth recognizing, you can put some nice, you know, animation 3D. So, for example, you can put a picture of a heart, and it's actually a 3D picture of a heart, and you'd see in a second, once it completes downloading, that it has some video graphics. So it's nice. So it's worth checking that out. It's a little bit of a, it's not a must, and it can add some weight to the file, so think carefully if you really need it. And also it distracts people from what you really have here, but you see how it looks. It's very nice. You can change the you can rotate it, and you can play with these kind of things. You can stop the animation as well, but keep in mind that pictures do increase the size of the file. Okay, so these are illustrations. They are important and you should use them. Okay, let's talk a little bit about tables. So tables are something worth knowing. They're a feature that will help you manage your data in a more organized way and also minimize mistakes, I would say. So let's take this, bunch of data that we have and combine it into a table. The way to do that is to highlight whatever it is that you want to flag as a table. Go into Insert and Table. When I do that, I usually like to have my first row as the columns of the headers. And you'll notice that you have a checkbox. Do you have headers or not? And usually I do. Once I click OK, you see that first of all, the view changed. And I've also automatically jumped into a section called Table Design, which you only have when you are in a table. So I don't have Table Design. Once I click a location here in Table, I get this new option. And let's go over some of the options that you have here. So there's the Convert to Range, which brings it back to the cells that we had before, which sometimes you need to do. There's a Resize Table, which is a very quick way to add columns or rows. Let's say I want 11 more rows. Let's say I want another column. I can also do that manually. I can right click. I have Insert and Delete. So for example, I want to delete a column. I want to insert a row. Okay. Automatically, whenever you start typing, a row is added. So if I start typing San Jose, you see I already have the rows highlighted, and I can go ahead and delete that line. It's always best to delete a row and column this manner, not by clear contents and everything. What's nice about tables is that you can reference a column. You see it. I'm trying to reference cell C2, but it's referring sales. So if I, let's say, want to take 10%, okay, and call that, let's say, tax, then you see it already calculates everything for all the rows. And if I now have, again, with the new city here, I hope it's in California. So if I add a value for the sales, you see automatically I get the tax for the new row. That's why using tables is quite nice. Now, we talked about using range and tables together. And now what you can see already here is the 3 ranges that I set up have already been extended. Because once you set up a range for a table or a column of a table, it will automatically change as, where was this here? It will automatically change as you add more rows. So here I have city selection, let's call it. Sorry. Yeah. This is why sometimes it's not so good to have a table. But let's move it over here, city selection. And you see I already have San Jose over here. I didn't need to add anything. And I can add AAA just so you see. And it's going to be here. And if I delete the row, then that AAA will disappear. And this is actually how I do recommend that you build your data validation on tables and not on regular cells, because then you just don't need to update every time the range when it changes. Let's talk a little bit about the name of the table. So you can also give the table a name. Right now it's table 1, but it could be sales. Sorry, sale. I'm using sales. So sales TB. And then again, you can just reference sales TB, and then you get this list, but you can do all sorts of things with referencing that table. Let's talk a little bit about this part and this part. You can change the layout, okay, to fit your needs. You can see you have all sorts of options. You have this part where you can exclude or include a header row, band rows, yes, no. The specific format doesn't have that. So band rows, yes or no, band columns, yes or no, etc., etc. Yes or no for a filter. So these are the main things. You can add a total row. So these are the main things that you can have here very quickly with the table, which is nice. You can also add a slicer, which is a great thing. Slicer is a filter that you can use, but it's external to this. So you can select here Illinois, and the table will change. You can select more by clicking on Control and selecting more. You can click on this button for multi-select, where you don't need to press on Control. So slicers are very nice, and again, in the advanced part of this or the next course, I'll be talking a lot about slicers and how to use them, but just be aware that you can use them also on tables. So from tables, I want to talk about pivot tables. Pivot tables are one of the most strongest features in Excel. If you're not aware of pivot tables, then this would be very important for you to realize what this is. Pivot table basically is an ability to analyze your data very quickly, summarize it, get your KPIs, your bottom line. So how you do it? Basically, if you have a table, the good thing is that you can connect it immediately to pivot table. So you click on Insert Pivot Table, and now it's referencing, you see that the table that we had, and there's a new and existing worksheet. I usually like to have the pivot table on a different sheet, but you can flag it in existing and just select where you want it to be located. So we've just created a blank pivot table, and the pivot table can reference a cell, but it could but it could also reference regular cells. So I could build pivot table also from here, even if it's not a table. Okay, so in the pivot table on the right, there are basically a few important windows that you need to at least know to begin with. These are all the columns or the data that you have. So they are going to match the headline over here. Then you have filters, columns, rows, and values, 4 different inputs. Filters are filters, so you can use them as filters to show you the data. Rows are basically the rows that you want to see, similar to columns, and values is what is the value that you want to present. So for example, I could put state as a row, and now you see I have the states here, and I could put the sales as a value, and I could put also the tax as a value. And you'll notice that it automatically gives me a sum. It identifies it as a number, and the default is to give me a sum. So you see it's very nice. I can see the sum of sales, the sum of taxes. If you click on this little black arrow and click on value field settings, so you can see that you can have different information. It could be count, it could be average, and now I see an average of the sales. So it wouldn't be, since it's only one value, so you wouldn't see sum equals average unless you have more than one value, like in Texas and California. If I drag city under state, then I would have a hierarchy of information. Okay? I can right click on a certain level and click on expand collapse. I could collapse only this one, or I could collapse the entire field. Okay? So that's a nice option as well. There's a lot that can be done here in the pivot tables. I can move the states here to the filter, and now I can use this as a filter. Show me just New York, for example. And also here I can, and I do recommend that you use not a filter, but use slicers. It's easier and it's much more convenient. So I'm going to take it out. To take out something, you can just pull it out over here. You can uncheck it over here. Same result. And for the pivot table, I go to pivot table, analyze, insert slicer, and for example state, and I can just do the same as I showed you before. Also in the pivot table, when you have one, you can see 2 new tabs: pivot table, analyze, and design. I'm not going to go over everything here, but it is important that you know that there's an option to add a calculated field. A calculated field is a field that you build, and it calculates ad hoc the result, even though you don't have it in the data. So I could add, for example, calculated field called percentage of tax, and say field tax divided by field sales. Click on OK, and see now it shows me the percentage of tax, even though that column does not exist. So this is also a very nice and powerful option that pivot tables have. It's very important that when you change information, let's say now I changed, I added I added a city, let's say Kentucky. Don't remember what the state for Kentucky is, and added 250 of the sales. It's not going to appear here. The reason is pivot tables need to be updated. So you can right click on a pivot table and click on refresh, and now you see Kentucky. You can also click on data, refresh all, and it will refresh all of the pivot tables, and among other things that you have here, which is good to know. Pivot tables require refreshing. Next, I want to talk about comments and notes. So there are 2 different options here let's go over here. You can add a comment. For example, see, new comment. Okay. And comment is like a back and forth that you can have with someone else or with you. All right. I can write which state is Kentucky. And it's going to remember who wrote the remark and when. And then I can actually, Kentucky is a state. So let me switch that to, for example, Cincinnati is Kentucky. Okay. So I can see here, I can reply. It's a state. And then I have a track of these comments, which is nice. So what I can also do is click here and either delete the thread or resolve thread. If I resolve the thread, you see it's faded. You can then reopen thread or delete it. So this is the comments. You have a note. A note, something a bit different. You can just write me. Make sure you check which state that is. And you see that whenever you move with your cursor over the cell, it's going to show it. You can click on this, show hide note. Now it's always going to show it. So that's not recommended. I usually like to do it like so. So comments and notes, nice features that you should be aware of and use whenever you have something extra to tell people. Let's talk a little bit about equations and symbols. In the Insert tab, you have under Symbols, Equation, and Symbol. If you click here, it will show you, well, let's say, common or used functions. So I can just click on that and I should get it. Okay, this could also be enlarged. And you can also build your own function. Sometimes you just need to build a function. So you have a lot of options here. You have these options, you have the symbols themselves, a lot more of course, so you could build, you have these. So each of these are like really a lot of options. So you could build something, and I'm going with the arrow, but 1/3, you can write it this way. Or you can add integral, all sorts of things. So if you ever see these and wonder how did they do that, it's built in. It's the same with the symbol. So there are many symbols that you can use here that they Excel already built in, so for you to easily play with, and you can actually jump to something specific or just scroll down and search for them. Okay, and you can see it over here. So this is also nice to use. I can insert a special symbol within my cell. So this is the symbols with the cell, and this is not within the cell. This is a, as we saw before, it's like an illustration. So that was how to use the equation and symbol. Let's talk a little bit about moving within the sheets. So as you notice, I can move between the sheets. I can zoom in using a number. So I can zoom in 75%. I can zoom in 125%, and I'm writing it manually. I can click here, plus minus, and get to the zoom I want, which is helpful. Sometimes you want to enlarge the zoom. If you want to change the sheet layout, so you have a sheet right to left, now A is to the right, now A is to the left. It helps with different languages. You have the grid line view, you see, with or without. Sometimes you don't want to see them, sometimes you do. I always do, but sometimes you don't. And then let's talk about adding sheets. So you can add a sheet and then the sheet will get the next number. No two sheets can have the same name. If I want to call this sheet 3, I'm going to get that error. So there cannot be two sheets with the same name. I can delete a sheet. I can also copy a sheet. So here there are two options. I can copy a sheet to another workbook or to an open workbook, or I can create a copy. And then I can click on this, move to the end, and then I have the same name with a running number, so you know that this is a copied sheet. Another thing is that you can add a color to the sheet. So right click, tab color, and I can add colors to my sheets. Sometimes they will have a meaning for you. Of course, you can change the order, and you can also hide a sheet. To unhide, right click anywhere on the sheets and click on Unhide, then you get that option. You can select more than one sheet using Control. Let's say I want to hide all 3. And again, unhide the same manner. So just a little bit about how to manage your sheet. Your sheet, sorry. Another feature that I want to show you, and let's use the sample data, or let's build another table. Take this table that we have, new sheet, just going to paste in value so it's not a table anymore. Now, for example, I want this to be referencing one another, and this is going to be referencing this. Okay, and now what I want to show you is in the formulas option, you have this place called formula auditing. Now, formula auditing can show you, for example, trace pendants. Trace pendants, precedence, sorry, shows you basically where is this connected to. So this could be more than one. So it could be, let me pull you on this. So you're going to see 3 arrows. This is important because it tells you if you make any changes here, it should impact this. And you can click on remove arrows. Trace dependence is the opposite. So in this case, no one is dependent on this one, but if I click here, it will show me that this one and this one are dependent. So it is important. If I delete that, I shouldn't be surprised that this happens. And you can always go to remove arrow. Now, another thing that I want to show you in that section is the error checking. So for example, I can add a function called sum, and I'm going to include my own cell. and it's going to give me that message, which I have an error. And now if I go to error checking and circular reference, I can even be in a completely different sheet. But I can go here and it's going to show me, it's going to take me to that location and show me that I have a problem here. So this is important for you to see. And of course, this is an error. Once I don't have any errors, this option should be blurred. Also nice, you can use something called watch window. Watch window basically gives you like a window that always shows you the information. So I can reference city, for example. Okay, and it shows me all the cities. And now if I go here to the sample data and I change this to or let me show you something nice. This is going to reference, for example, here, and I can be here and see, see the impact. Let's say this, the name San Jose will come from here, and you can see that if I change that, this changes. I don't use it that much, but just so you're aware of this option, which is kind of nice. So, you know, a little bit about what you can do here with the formulas, and yeah. Let's talk a little bit about other things that you can do, other options that you can do real quick. Let's say you have a list of states, like in this case, and you don't want to see Texas twice and California twice. What you can really easily do is highlight the entire column, which I like to do, which is the quickest. Go to data, and you have here this icon called remove duplicates, and it's going to ask you whether or not your data has header. And then I click that, and now it is going to remove the two duplicates. Now this also can be used for more than one column. So I can select both of these, remove duplicates, and now it's going to ask me which column to paste my duplicates, because I can use both. And once I remove the sales, the sales will be removed as well. So remove duplicates, nice option that you should be aware of. Let's talk about outlining. Outlining is the ability to quickly hide and unhide rows and columns. Let's say you don't always want to show the text. You can highlight a column and click on group. And now, whenever you have these buttons, you can just delete that outline. This is based on the level, so I can add another group, and now both of them are going to be hidden. But I can also add another layer, and now I have 3. And you see now when I selected 2, it only hides the one that was not used before. So it's a nice option whenever you want to easily hide and unhide columns. To quickly remove everything, you just have to ungroup and clear outline, and you gotta highlight everything, and that should work. You can also use the option, I don't really like to do that, but you could use subtotal, and subtotal asks you basically whenever there's a change in, so for example in state, because that makes sense, I'm going to use the function sum, but you can use different functions, and for which column, so let's do it for sales. And basically you see it it doesn't sort the list before, so it's not that powerful. So the best way to do is to actually sort based on the state, for example, and then if you do the same trick, now you get the subtotal of the different states. If you click on one, you see the grand total. So again, I don't really like to use this because it doesn't give you a lot of flexibility if things change. This is where if you use a pivot table, it's much more stronger. I do like to use the outlines whenever I want to have an ability to quickly hide and unhide columns. Hiding and rows, sorry. Hiding is very simple. You right click and hide. Unhiding, a little bit more tricky. You have to select the columns out of the hidden column and click on unhide. Alternatively, you can always click on this button, which is everything, and then right click, unhide, and that should also work. So that's outlining and hiding. It's good to know that you can check spelling. If you click on function F7, you get this pop-up message and you can check spelling. So if I wrote California here wrong, it's going to pick it up. And then you can ignore all, change all, etc., etc. But it's a very nice feature, especially for us that have some difficulty spelling everything. So it's good that you are aware of this. Let's talk a little bit about protecting the sheet. So in review, you have an ability to protect the sheet. Protect the sheet means that people cannot change whatever's protected. So if you protect the sheet, you have a lot of options here. I'm not going to cover everything, but mainly whatever you allow here will be handled, will be allowed. And you have the option to input a password. You don't have to do that, but you can. So if I put a password 123, it's going to ask again, what's the password? And now basically the sheet is protected, can't make any changes. To unprotect, you see now it's called unprotect, I have to key in the password. You can protect without a password, just like this. And you can also you can also define which cells can still be changed. All you gotta do is you select the cells that you want to be changed, right click, format cells, protection, and remove the locked option. Now, when I click protect, I can't change the tax, but I can change the sales. So protect is a very useful option whenever you have more than one person working on this, or if you just want to make sure you don't make mistakes. Something nice that you should be aware of and use is always freezing the panes. Go to View, Freeze Panes. Now there are three options: freeze the top row, first column, or freeze panes based on your location. I usually use this. Once you click on it, it basically it freezes whatever's on top and to the left of the cell that you were on. So if imagine you have a lot of columns to the right, you still have the first column, and no matter how many rows you have, you still have the first row. This is very, 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 very useful, and I recommend that you use that. To unfreeze, right click it again, unfreeze panes, and you're good to go. We talked a little bit about shortcuts with the keyboard. I don't use it too often, but there are a few that you must know because they are very, very useful. Of course, Control Z to copy, Control V to paste, and Control Z is one of my favorite. That's the undo. Control Y is actually to redo, so you can always backtrack whatever you did. So if I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I started clicking Control Z, it goes back. I start clicking Control Y, it still remembers what I did, which is very nice whenever you want to go back and forth and see if things change. So that's just a taste. There are many shortcuts that you can use with the keyboard. These are the ones that I mainly use. All right, so that was the last topic that I wanted to go over in this basic Excel course. There are much more that you can learn. There are much more features, functions, and options in Excel. Excel is such an awesome tool, and it keeps improving and changing and growing. And there's so much you can learn from YouTube and other content that you consume throughout the web. I hope you enjoyed this course. Feel free to leave comments with what you liked and you didn't like, and if there are topics that you want me to deep dive and build a course just on them, also feel free to write, and I'll take that into account. I hope you've learned something new, at least one thing, hopefully 20 or 30 things. And keep watching my channel. Subscribe. See you next time.